Taking a look today at Mustang disc brakes on a Ford Ranger axle. In the previous video, I kind of motioned as to how all these parts would fit. Now I've got it mocked up with all the parts where they belong. It's a Ford Mustang SN95 disc brakes, which include these brackets, which on the Mustang are bolted to the outside of this flange. But in this conversion, this little piece is cut out and one bolt goes with it, one bolt hole goes with it, and with 3 remaining bolts, the bracket is bolted onto the back side of this flange. That puts the caliper in about the right space relative to the Mustang disc, now mounted to the Ranger axle. So these little pieces that I cut out, I'll likely save with the idea that someday I'll weld them back in, but I'm not going to let that keep me from getting the axle into the car and making it operational. The axle is not moving rapidly towards the car, and it's kind of turning into a big ball of rust out here. Unfortunately, I did not take the Triumph TR4 that this axle is destined for off the road yet, and with the rain starting, it's likely now not to happen until spring. That's why I've put some effort into the brakes now, getting accomplished what I can to the axle out of the car, but I do want to mock it up in the car before I invest time in the final straightening and the installation of the ring and pinion. Back to the brakes. These anti-moan brackets fit in the space that's available, almost touching the U-bolts, but in truth the U-bolts are going to have to come in a little bit. That'll be its own project, so there'll be plenty of clearance here. Even if I had to cut some of this off, I think the anti-moan brackets would still function. Some guys leave those off. Get this brake hose out of the way. Some guys leave those off, but as long as they fit in the space, I'll likely include the anti-moan brackets. These 3 little screws, I've preserved their mounting points. They hold on a dust shield, and the dust shields I have are pretty bent up. Maybe I'll look for better ones at the junkyard, and that's another optional thing. Some guys leave them out. I'll put them in if I can. These brake hoses, the brackets are welded to them. I have to find a place to attach these, maybe like I showed there, or maybe on this side. They seem to want to line up right between the U-bolts, which is fine with me. Just kind of a happy coincidence there. I'll walk around to the other side in a moment, show some details there. Taking a look now from the opposite side. Again, here's the Mustang caliper and obviously the Mustang disc. The brackets that we cut a piece out of are mounted on the opposite side of the car, but everything else stays on the same that it belongs. So you can see here, this is labeled right hand. I labeled this driver before I took it off the Mustang axle, but this is the passenger side bracket flipped over to the driver's side of the car. Again, the clearance, the anti-moan bracket is going to be clear of the suspension U-bolt. The brake hose with this bracket welded on is going to have to find a home, likely either here or here. I may not make that final decision until I test fit the axle in the car. There may be some clearance to the Triumph floor issues or clearance to other Triumph hardware issues that won't be apparent until I have the axle in the car. Nothing to do with the conversion, but this little spring and bushing goes on top of the brake pads and appears to engage a notch in the brake caliper piston. It's very dark. I don't think the camera is going to show that, unfortunately. So I don't know if I need 4 of these, 1 for each pad, or if I just need them on the caliper piston side. Maybe someone watching the video knows more about this and can leave a comment. Don't know if these are sold separately either, if I have to buy a brake pad to get that. Something else I'll point out, the centering of the caliper around the disc. I made these yellow marks before I took the calipers off of the Mustang axle, and while it looks like the disc is perfectly positioned in the caliper now, that's only because there's no guts in the axle at this moment. So the disc is just located by the brake pads now. When I have the axle guts installed, if the disc moves too far that way, I can add washers here. I hope I won't have to. If I have to move the caliper that way, I'm not sure what I would do in that case. So hopefully they can stay right where they're at, even after I have the differential installed. Also wanted to take a look at the brake lines that I'll be using. This is the brake line from the Mustang axle. And of course it's too wide, since that axle is wider, plus this Ranger axle has been narrowed. So I'm sure I'll have to add some S-bends in here to use up the extra length, so the tube end will meet the rubber hose. Also, somewhat handily, the Mustang uses a vent bolt to hold this T on. The T and this hose are made as one piece. So somewhere in this area I'll drill a threaded hole for the vent bolt, and I'll mount the T. This particular pipe unfortunately has gotten flattened, so I'll need to find a new one at the junkyard, and again make some S-bends in it to use up the extra length so it'll fit here. And for these factory quasi-Adele clamps, I'll likely just weld coupler nuts to the axle where I need to hold the tube in place. And like the positioning of these hoses, I'll probably not commit to the vent bolt location until I've test fit the axle in the car, and that probably won't be until springtime. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to. If you have a question, leave a comment. Even if you have a suggestion, please leave a comment. Thanks, and be sure to watch my other videos.